Hello everyone and welcome to this new tutorial on Python. In this example we will see how to scrape this website. So the website is coinmarketcap.com. This website provides information about cryptocurrency. And we can see on the main page, if we scroll down, that we have 100 cryptocurrencies. Basically, this website ranks cryptocurrencies based on market cap. We can see, for example, that Bitcoin has the largest market cap, and then Ethereum, and then Tether, and so on. So we will see how to scrape this first page, basically all 100 cryptocurrencies. What we are interested in is the rank, the name, the symbol, the price, the market cap, and the volume of the 24 hours. So to visualize better what you will do, first of all we need to scrape the data, and for that, since this website is dynamic, we will use Playwright. So for those of you who are not aware of Playwright, Playwright is basically like Selenium. It's used in Python to scrape dynamic websites, but it's lighter than Selenium, so that's why it's used more nowadays. We will also need to store our data. For that, we will use Postgres. Basically, we will create a database on Postgres, then create a table that will hold our data. We will also need a driver. Basically, for our Python script to connect to Postgres, it needs a driver. And for our example, we will use psychopg2. And obviously, the entire code will be in Python. So let's get started. Here we are on our text editor of choice, which is VS Code, but of course you can use any other text editor. So let's get started. The first thing, as always in Python, is to import the required libraries. So the first thing we need to import is Playwright. As you can see, we imported the sync API. Basically, Playwright has two types of APIs, the sync API and the async API. For beginners, it's always recommended to start with the sync API, which is the one we are using. But along the way, it's better to switch to the async one. After that, we need to import psychopg2, which is the one right here. And just to remind you, psychopg2 is used to connect Python to our database, which is PostgresSQL. We need this function separately to insert multiple rows of data at once later. Now that we imported the required libraries, we can pass on to the main function. So for good practice, we will define everything in a main function. And just to keep it in the best practices side of things, we will run the main function in the name equal main. So if name is equal to main, we want to run our main function. Now we can pass to Playwright. So before writing any code, if we go and hover over this function, we can see on the far top right, it says Playwright Context Manager. So in Python, if anything is defined as a context manager, it means that we can use the with keyword. So with sync Playwright as P, we can write our code right here. So our code will be divided into two sections. One is for scraping the data, and the second one will be for, let's say, saving it to Postgres. So scrape data, and let's say this one will be to save data. Now we can create our browser object. So browser is equal to p.chromium.launch, and we can pass a headless equal to false, and we should always end it with browser.close. So to explain what we did, so inside the sync playwright context manager, we can create our browser. Basically, this is a browser that will be instantiated by playwright, that will open the website and get us back the HTML where we will parse our data. You can see that we used Chromium, basically Chrome. We can also use Firefox or WebKit. You can think of WebKit as Safari. Now we set headless equal to false. For all of you who don't know what headless means, so basically if we set headless equal to true, which is the default in Playwright, we won't see the browser popping up. So by setting it equal to false, we can see the browser popping up, and which is what we want usually in development stage. So we can then create the page object, page equal to browser dot new page, and after that we can open the URL. So page dot go to, and in here we can pass our URL. So this is our URL for our case. I will just copy it and paste it in here. So if we run the code as is, it will open the browser, it will go to this URL, but it will close immediately. So for that, let's say we want the browser to, before running the close command, to wait for like 5 seconds. For that we use the page.wait for timeout, and you would pass 5,000. Basically each 1,000 is a second. So if we save the code, if we go to our terminal and run python app.py, okay, so for your case you will just run python app.py, but on my system I've got different Python versions installed, and I will run Python 3.10 simply because Playwright and PsychoPG2 are installed in this version. So if I write it, if I set it, we can see this window popping up. Notice here Chromium, and then it closed. So okay, so now we can go to the scraping phase. But just before we do that, I want to mention something out. So if we go to Chrome and we refresh the website, I want you to pay attention to the right here. So if I scroll down really fast, you can see that, I don't know if it was noticeable or not, but in this kind of, let's say, dynamic websites, the data is being loaded as we scroll. So basically, when we refresh or access the website the first time, we can see that we have 6 coins, but not all 100 are currently present. And if you want to scrape all 100 right now, we can't. We usually need to scroll down so that the data is loaded, and then we can scrape all 100. Basically what I'm trying to say is Playwright needs to scroll down before scraping, and the way we can do that is really easy. So if we go back to our script, let's add a comment here, scrolling down, and then the way we achieve that is usually with the wheel function. So let's say for I in range, let's say 5, and page dot mouse dot where, and you will pass it the y and the x and y. So for our case, x is 0 and y will be 2000, and then we usually would like to put some kind of a timeout in case like the internet is not fast and stuff like that. So let me explain this code real quick. Basically what we are doing here is looping over 5 values, and each time the web page will be scrolled down by 2000 and then paused for 1 second. So let me save that and run our script. As we can see, the window just popped up. And here it goes. It's being, no, it's my mouse. I'm not the one who, my mouse is just under the window. I'm not the one who's doing it manually, basically. So with that being handled, we can pass to the actual scraping phase. I want to remove this since we don't need it, the timeout, and start our scraping. So basically to scrape an item in Playwright, we use either the query selector or the query selector all function, meaning that we would do something like page dot query or query selector. If you want to get all the matching values, we use query selector all. If we just want one, or if only one exists, we want query selector. Note that query selector all returns a list of values. So for example, if we do that, and then in here we would either pass the XPath of the element on the web page or the CSS selector. Okay, so let's go to the website and test that out. If I go to the website, so what we want is all of these coins. Basically, we want the list of all those rows. Let's say we want to inspect on any one of them. Let me scroll this down. So as you can see right here, basically what we have here is a table with the following class, and then we have a tBody tag, and then that tBody has TRs, and each TR represents a unique coin. So basically we want the list of all these TRs, and then we will loop over each TR and get the TDs. So first of all, we need to get the TRs. For our case, we will be using XPath. Okay, so first of all, we want to get this table. So let me copy the class, Control C, and using XPath, I will mention that I want the table. Okay, so by default, we already get this table, but just in case, we want to specify the class. So the way we do that is like this, equal, and then yes, let it copy it. I forgot something, so yes, it's the class. So now we got the table. After that, we want to get the tBody. So tBody, and after that we want to get the TR. So as you can see, the first TR is what's highlighted. But if we go here, we can see that we have 100, meaning there are 100 values. And if we scroll over them, or if we loop over them, we can see that we have all of them selected. So what we can do is copy this XPath, go back to our code. Let's say tr's XPath equal to, and then no, we want to use this tags. Okay, so tr's XPath, and you want to save this in a variable that you would call tr's, let's say list. Okay, just to check that we have the tr's, let's print the length of this list. So print the length of the list. Okay, we will save our script and run it again. So the window is popping up. We have the automatic scroll, and then the window closed with an error. Oh, okay, yes. So the mistake I made was I used query selector and then used the length. Basically, I treated this as a list, but for it to be a list, I need to add all. So let me save that again. Let me clear my terminal and run it again. As usual, we have the window popping up, we have the automatic scroll, and then we have the window closed, and we can see here that we have 100 items. Basically, we are correct. So this TR list contains all 100 of our items. Now that we have all 100 items, let me delete this. What we can do now is to loop over them and to save what data we want. So let me explain that. So for tr in tr's list, this is something that you usually do when scraping like multiple products or website, is that we use a dictionary. And first of all, we would use some kind of a list that I usually call master list. This list will contain all of our products, and then inside of this list you will have some kind of a, let's say, coin dictionary, for example, coin, let's say dict. And then after all is done, or let's say all the data is added to the dictionary for each item, obviously, we would then append that to the list. Master list dot append the coin dict. So okay, let's go back to our website, and we can see that we have our TR. So basically, till now what we have is the list of all of those products. Now we want to go inside of them and get what we need. So let me show the Bitcoin first real quick. So as you can see, we have all the TDs in here. Basically each TD represent a value. This is the first TD, all of those are the second TD, the price is the third, the fourth, the fifth, the eighth, and so on. Basically, we want only the TDs that we are interested in. So if we go back to our script, we can, for example, say TDs for this specific TR is equal to TR, which is this one right here, dot query selector all, and we would just pass all the TDs. So basically now this TD variable contain all the TDs. If you want to test that out, let's say coin dict, let's say we want the name of the coin. Now before that, let's say we want the ID. And just to mention something real quick, in my database I want this to be the ID. Basically I want the rank to be the ID on my database. So it is equal to TDs, which is this one right here. And if we go back, we can see right here that it's not the first, meaning this is 0. It's not it, it's the second one, because this, let's say shape right here, which is a star, is the first TD. So basically you want the second. So this one has an index of 0 and this one has an index of 1. So this is the one we want. If I go back, let's say TD with index of 1 dot inner text. This inner text function is used in Playwright or on the Playwright element that has been created using query selector or query selector all to just get the text of them. So let's test out what we did for now. So we made a master list that will contain in future all the lists, let's say all the coins, and then we are looping over the TRs, creating a new dictionary each time and saving the rank to that dictionary under the ID key, and then appending that to the master list. So if you want to print master list, if we are correct till now, what you would find is 100 dictionaries, and all of them will contain ID and only an ID, and in each one of them the ID will be different. The first one will have ID 1, the second one will have ID 2, and so on. So let me just clear this one because we'll have a bunch of text, and run the script. And as you can see right here, here is our result. We can see that we have a list, and this list contains dictionaries, as you can see, and each dictionary contains an ID. This one is ID 1, ID 2, ID 3. So let me get this down, which is what we did right here. So basically, to show it on the website, what we did was getting all of those. This is the ID 1, ID 2, ID 3, ID 4, and so on. So now what we want to get are the Bitcoin, is the name, the symbol, the price, the market cap, and the volume. So let's say you want to get the name. Let me go back to this one. So first of all, we have the ID, the third ID, TD. Like we said, we don't count this one. This one right here is for the rank, and this one, which is the third one, meaning index 2, because index the first one has index 0, is the one that we want. But notice that it got both the name and the symbol. So we need to go down, or should I say deeper. So if we expand this, we can see that this p tag right here holds the name, and this other p tag holds the coin, or should I say the coin symbol. So we need to get this p and this p. If we go to the first one, which is the one containing the name, we can see that it has a color of text, which is just the color, let's say. And this one has a color of text3. So we will differentiate them based on that. Let me go back to my text. Let's say we want to get the name. Like we said, it's the third one, meaning index 2, and then we can't just get the name, the text. We need to query that to go to the p tags. So that query selector, and then we would want to pass the XPath. We said that it's a p tag that has a color of text. Okay, so I always want to do this to bypass any errors, and then dot, we get the text dot, if I can type, dot inner text. I will just copy this one and paste it and call it symbol. It also is residing in the third TD, but the query selector was text3. Okay, so we said that the name is a p tag with the color text, and the symbol is a p tag with color text3. So to verify that real quick, if we go right here, we can see that the name that's being highlighted has a color text, and the other this symbol basically has a p of color text3. So let's go back to our text. Let's save this, and let's clear the terminal and run our code once again, just to verify. Okay, so here is our result, and we can see that we are basically correct. We still have a list with a bunch of dictionaries, and each dictionary got an ID, the name, and the symbol. We can see that for the first one, we have the ID of 1, the name Bitcoin, and the symbol of BTC. And for the second one, the ID is 2, the name is Ethereum, and the symbol is ETH. And if you wanna verify with the last one, for example, we can see that we have an ID of 100, the name is Theta Fuel, and symbol is TFUEL. If we go to our browser and scroll down, and yes, the ID is 100, the name is Theta Fuel, and the symbol is TFUEL. So we are correct. What you need now is to get the rest of the data. So we also want the price. Let me just, so we can see that this one is the index 0, index 1, index 2, and index 3 is the price. As we can see right here, it's the fourth one, so index 3. If we try to expand this, yes, there is nothing. So let me put this down. Okay, so coin dictionary, if I can type price is equal to, we said that it's on the fourth TD, meaning TD of index 3, dot inner text. And before saving this, I want to mention something. So usually, let me go back to, so let's get to this text directly. So if we save it as is, we will get this text, exactly this text right here. It has both the dollar sign and the, let's say, the comma and the full stop or whatever. So usually it depends on the case. How do you want to, let's say, your string or your float or your integer to look like? In our case, I want to remove this, the dollar sign, and also I want to remove this. Basically, I want to have a float or a decimal value or a float point value. So the way we can achieve that in Python, first of all, I want to remove using the replace method. So that replace, what I want to replace first is this. I want to replace it with nothing. That replace again this with nothing. And then after that, I want to wrap all of this in a float. Basically, I will have a float value at the end. The reason this is important is because when we pass it to the database, it will go as a float. Basically, we can perform calculations and other stuff. If I don't add this float to it, we will get a string, basically a text, or a text that looks like a float, but it's not a float. We can't calculate it and stuff like that. So we got our price. Now we want our market cap, which is this one. Let me get the value. We can see that the market cap is on the 8th TD. Basically, we'll take index 7. So if we go back right here, coin dect, let's call it market cap in USD. We said that of all our TDs, we will take index 7, since it's the 8th one. We will get the inner, if I can type, inner text, and then we basically just use those. We'll remove the dollar sign and so on, and you want it to be an integer. So the last thing is to get the volume of the past 24 hours. Of all our TDs, it's the 9th one. Basically, we'll use index 8. But also, we can see that we have two separate values, this one and this one, and we just want the above one. So if we get inside, we can see that this is the one that we want and not this one. So it's a P with a color text, and this one is a P with color text too. So we want the 8th index and we want the p inside of it. So coindex, we will name it volume 24 hours in USD, because the value is in USD. So we want it to be an int as well. Of our TDs, we said that it has index 8, and then we will use the query selector because you want the p inside of it, and then you want the p. We said that the p has a color, equal to text, and then we want that inner, if I can type the word inner text. Yes, before that we also want to remove those. So basically we are done, and to visualize this better, rather than just printing the entire list, let's print it element by element. So let's say for element in master list, print element. I will save that. And then I will run our script. And here is our data. So we can see that for the first ID, the name is Bitcoin, the symbol is BTC, the price is this float, the market cap in USD is this one, the volume for the last 24 hours is this one, and so on. So basically we can, if you want, you can use pandas to save this as a CSV or in Excel, but for our case we want to save it to PostgresSQL, which is really simple. So let's do that now. Let me first clear our terminal, and yes, the first thing I want to mention is our data is saved in this master list. It's basically saved in the format of a list that contains dictionaries, and each dictionary obviously contains keys and values. For us to save it to Postgres, we need it to be a list of tuples. You may ask why then I did this. Because this is the most common. This will be very simple to turn it to tuples, and also it will be very simple to save it to CSV and Excel, which is the common case. If you want to save it to, let's say, tuples, it's really easy. If you want to change it basically to, let's call it tuples. So let's say list, let's call it list of tuples. It is equal to, and we will use here a list comprehension. We will say tuple, and then inside of it dict.values for dict in master list. So basically what you will get now is, basically this is the format you will have. We will have a list that will contain, let's say, the ID, and then the name, and then the symbol, and so on. Now that we have our list, we can save our data to Postgres, which is easy compared to all of this. But first of all, there are stuff that we need to check. Okay, so before saving our data, we need to create a table on Postgres that will contain our data. So if we go to pgadmin, which is the graphical interface for Postgres databases. So I've got all of these installed databases. The one we will use is test. Basically, I just created this for test purposes. And then on the schemas, I want to create a table with the name crypto that got an ID, which is the primary key, and it will be a varchar. The name will also be a varchar, the symbol as well. The price will be a float, the market cap will be an int, and the volume will be an int. So let's run the code, and then let me refresh this one. So if we go to the schemas, to the table, yes, our table is here. So let's test it out. Select all from, we named it crypto. So from crypto, if I run this, we can see that we have an empty table that has an ID, has an ID, a name, a symbol, a price in USD, market cap in USD, and volume. So let's send the data back here. Okay, so now that we have our data in this list of tuples and we want to save it, the first thing is to always connect to the database, connect to DB, and for that we use PGSQL2. So pgcon, we'll call it is equal to pgsql2.connect, and this connection will take a few variables or parameters. The first one is the host. Since the database is on my system, I will just use local host. The second thing will be the name of the database. The name I gave mine is test. The third one will be the user that created or owned the database. In my case, it's Mac. And then we will pass the password, which in my case there is no password. So to recap on this, basically the connect method on CyclePG2 allows us to connect to the database, either if it's on our local machine like we used in here, or if it's on a server somewhere, we will just use the IP address and all of that. This is the name of the database, which is this one, test. And for the user, it's Mac. And for the password, I didn't use any password. So if I go here and go to parameters, we can see that Mac is the one that owns the database, basically. So let's get back. Now that we have our connection between our script and the database, we want to create a cursor. And a cursor is just the shell that runs the code. It's the same as this one right here where we wrote our SQL code. code. We need that to pass or insert stuff or run queries or any of that. So I will just, should I say, create cursor, and I will name it pg cursor is equal to our connection dot cursor, meaning that we can use this to write code. Okay, so we have 100 rows of data, and there are a lot of methods to insert data to Postgres using PsychoPG2, and each one has its benefits. When do you want to use it? Why do you want to use it? And so on. For our use case, I've searched on the internet on the most efficient one, and what I found is this one right here. This is the most efficient. So execute values. It will take the cursor as the first parameter, then after that it will take the SQL code. So what you want to do is to insert into, and this is just like normal SQL, so insert into crypto, and then we would pass it what to insert. So the first is the ID, the second is the name, the third is price in USD, the fourth is market cap in USD, the fifth is the volume of 24, if I can write volume 24 hours USD, then values, let me double check that. Yes, it's values, and after that we need this one, and after that we need our tuple, our, let's say, list of tuples. What do we name it? I totally forgot. No, yes, list of tuples. So to recap on what we did, we created our connection, we created the cursor, and then we are inserting the data. Basically this method takes the cursor and takes the SQL code and also takes the data. This is just basically simple SQL code insert into this table, which is the crypto. We have the columns ID, name, price, market, and volume, which are the columns present here: ID, name, symbol, price USD, market cap USD, and volume 24 hours USD. Values, and then we didn't pass the values directly, we passed them as a list. So after that we always want to commit our changes, basically. So whenever we insert something in the database, we want to commit it, otherwise the changes won't be reflected. So commit, and for that we use the pg connection, pgcon.commit. Now our changes are persisted. And finally, what we need to do, and to always, is to close the connection. This is very, very important. If we don't close the connection, we may get a lot of errors later on. I'm talking about large scale product. So pg connection.close, and I believe all is. So insert into crypto, name, ID. Yeah, so let me save that. And let me run the code. and we have an error. Yes, the error is that I forgot the symbol. Okay. Okay, it's id name symbol. Sorry about that. So let's run it again. So we got the usual thing. The window popped up. It's scrolling and it will close. And we didn't have an error this time. So if all is good, if we go to, so previously when we run this SQL code, we did get nothing. So let's run it one more time and all is correct. We can see that we have our table. Yes, and we get all 100 of them. Okay, this is the ID, the name, the symbol, the price, the market cap, and the volume. So yes, that's that. Thank you for watching. I hope you subscribe to my channel. I will be posting more on scraping and Python automation, and I will also ask you to check out all the code and more explanation on my blog, which will be linked in the description. Thank you.